Welcome to Manifold. Today, my guest is Marc Martinez. He is the director of a new documentary called Dream Big. The documentary is a love note to the 1970s in Southern California, to the golden age of bodybuilding, and to Gold's Gym in particular. Marc, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Stephen. Thanks for having me.
Now, I just want to start by saying everyone should watch this documentary because it is a beautiful insight into a long gone era in Southern California, which was very unique. It's a window into a particular subculture that has become mainstream now in America, but at the time was a very fringe subculture, bodybuilding. I do want to say to all the viewers that before you watch Dream Big, which I was able to watch it on Amazon Prime, and I think I only paid 49 cents. It was very inexpensive just to rent it for a week. But before you do that, honestly, you should watch another documentary called Pumping Iron, which came out in 1977 and played a big role in transforming America and making Americans aware of what bodybuilding was all about. So watch Pumping Iron and then watch Dream Big. Marc, sorry for that long monologue. I want to start by just asking you about your childhood and what got you interested in bodybuilding.
Yeah, I think when I got to high school, entering high school, you're licking the wounds from a first love gone bad, and at that age when we're constructing who we are as a person, the default for many, and Joe Weider just, knew this, is that most guys will think, oh, I'm not enough, and it's human nature. We don't look inward, we look outward, and outward into the mirror. And you're like, you know what? I don't look like those guys in the back of the magazine and the ads in the muscle courses. So I know that was a large impetus for me. Also, my freshman year, a teammate had brought the book Pumping Iron to school. And when I saw that, and that was the year the book was released. This was like school year 74, 75. And the photos in that, one, I grew up in Southern California. We were not that far from where those photos were taken. But when you grew up as a native Southern Californian, Venice, California is not a safe place. Had a reputation for a lot of oddballs back then anyway. And, but it really attracted me to at least, start lifting a bit, put on a little bit of weight. And it was kind of like in the back of my mind for a couple more years before the journey to gold. But I think that was it, just like, scrawny kid, let me add some muscle, maybe that'll cure everything, So
I want to dwell on this just a little bit. Now, at the beginning of the documentary, I think it's a little autobiographical, right? So I think there's a shot of you with the teenage girl who broke your heart.
Yeah. Just, by the way, a wonderful person.
But sort of led you to feel like, oh man, I got to do some self-improvement or something.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And, to be autobiographical, the owner of the gym, Ken Sprague, when we had reconnected, now I was going to do this documentary. And, there was like 5 guys I was interviewing at the studio up here in Northern California. And he says, I don't know what your structure is going to be, but you should tell your story. And I was really hesitant too. I said, I just kind of want to do a almost, archaeological type of overview. And he's like, I just think documentaries are much more interesting when there's a personal handle you could grip onto, so to speak. So, I kind of did it begrudgingly, but I did. Yeah. So
I'm glad you did, because I think your story is every kid's story. And, something about the 70s is that, because I'm a little bit younger than you, but I did live through the 70s. And one of the things was people in our generation, you never really saw a big muscular guy in person. You saw it first maybe in the comics themselves, like Captain America or Superman. That was like the first like actual muscular, well-developed man that you ever saw. And then in the back of the comic book where the ads were all these weird ads trying to sell you things that would make you look like that. Remember all that?
Right.
I think you
No,
even referenced it.
absolutely. Absolutely.
And so when a beautiful book of photography like Pumping Iron comes out, and I'm going to show stills throughout our discussion. Sorry for the people that are listening to this as audio only. You might want to switch over and watch the YouTube version of this podcast just this once, because Mark and I are going to discuss some of these photos, some that appear in his film and some which appear in the movie the movie Pumping Iron and in the book Pumping Iron. But when I first saw those photos, and maybe you as well, some of those images were the very first time I had seen an anatomically fully developed, latissimus dorsi or erector spina, the anatomical muscles that just normally you don't really realize what they're supposed to look like when they're fully developed. So it was had a very big impact on me when I first saw the book Pumping Iron.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree 100%. I was, just flabbergasted because, I think, growing up in Southern California, we were kind of, and now it doesn't matter with the internet, a fad hits anywhere. It can hit, in Dubai or Kenya or New York on the same day. But, it's like, I was listening to, I'm trying to think of what musician it was. I think it was Danny Elfman from Oingo Boingo. And he was on a podcast and he said back in the early 80s, he goes, because when we were playing in California and then we would go to the Midwest, we would see a difference in clothing styles because some of the styles hadn't hit yet, which was common. I mean, I was around, yeah, top level professional bodybuilders, no one saw. So yeah, that blew my mind. But in Southern California being a hotbed for, developing athletes into the NFL or Major League Baseball or whatnot, you saw more than your fair share of guys that picked up iron, but definitely nowhere near the level of Arnold DeFranco or Bill Grant or Frank Zane. And those photos, George Butler's photos just captured, yeah, not only the guys' physiques, but also that time and place, the beach. Just
Phenomenal. Yeah,
yeah,
phenomenal. So you mentioned already some famous names. Now, most of my listeners are,
right,
science guys and startup founders and professors. So they're not going to know these names. We're going to go through a few
right.
photos now to just acquaint them with the young men at the time who are now older, that you're talking about, who are giants from the era of the golden age of bodybuilding. Now, you mentioned Ken Sprague. He's
Yeah,
the tall guy in the back
yeah.
of the
Ken is
picture.
on the far right, behind left to right. And this is the Second Street Golds. This is the Santa Monica location. And on the far left, the gentleman with his head turned sideways was a guy we all knew as Frenchie. Um, he obviously was from France, and we just knew him as Frenchie. Then there's Robby Robinson, the first bodybuilder you see, and I think Robby was the first pro bodybuilder I saw up close when I walked into Gold's in Santa Monica, and just seeing not only the size of muscle but the cross striations that you get from really advanced development, um, was just freakish. And then you see in the middle there the gentleman with the mustache and glasses. That's publisher Joe Weider. Um, and then next you'll see Bill Grant, who's in my documentary, and wonderful gentleman, still training hard in New Jersey. And then Ken, who saved Golds, who bought Golds when it was going to go under back in 1971, and saved it from closing down. And so, yeah, that's left to right.
For those of you who are just catching the audio, we're talking about a picture from the 70s. In the front are two very famous bodybuilders, Robby Robinson and Bill Grant, who are both African American. and this guy Ken Sprague, who saved Golds when it got into financial trouble, is in the background. And Joe Weider, I think, has even like maybe received his own biopic at this point. Like he's the business mind that really grew bodybuilding from nothing into a multi-million-dollar empire.
George Butler, when he was making Pumping Iron, had said, Arnold was famous within his world, but it was a very small world. Joe deeply loved bodybuilding, I'm sure, but he could only grow it so much. I think the conduit that helped Joe access a much wider audience was the writer Charles Gaines and the filmmaker George Butler. I think without those guys, we wouldn't even be having these discussions today. I mean, who knows, right? You can only guess. Yeah.
I totally agree with you. The photos, if you think of photography as an art, the book Pumping Iron is a work of art, and the prose in that book is actually phenomenal. So those are two super talented guys. We'll show you a photo of them in just a second, who somehow got the tip that this was a cool thing happening, and they just went and explored it and helped to blow it up.
Yeah. I'm sorry, go on.
Oh, I was just going to say, before we leave this photo for the people that are watching who can see it, like probably you're familiar with what people mean when they say he has a 6-pack or he has an 8-pack. They're talking about the abs.
Yeah.
But both of these guys are so defined. You can see their serratus, which is a small set of muscles on either side of the abs, which most people never know they have serrati. But like if you look at a top level bodybuilder, you can see that. And it's an example of something about the human anatomy that, like when I was growing up in the 70s, I first saw these pictures. I was like, what is that?
Yeah.
So let me just jump through a couple of these photos, and we will talk some more. This is from the book Pumping Iron. This is Arnold working out. He's doing incline presses in one picture, and he's doing pullovers with a barbell in another photo. And maybe you can say a little bit, was this the original Golds?
That was the original Golds on Pacific Avenue. And that was, obviously these are the George Butler photos. And what's great about one, because this is photography from an artist. So, in like a bodybuilding magazine or probably a how-to book, the camera angle, is going to show something totally different, like how to properly perform this exercise or whatever. And here it's great. He's just that overhead shot where, Arnold is laying on the bench, and it's just a totally different perspective. And then also the incline press shots, the series of them, it's more of a eye in the sky type of look down that I think is really, really interesting. Just wonderful photos.
What hit me when I was a kid and I saw these photos was, number one, you can see the pain that Arnold is, the concentration and the pain that he's enduring. And in the incline press, which was actually my favorite movement, upper body movement when I was growing up, you can see his eyes on the bar and they're bugging out as he tries to get the last few reps. His eyes look like they're about to explode out of his head.
Yeah.
So really, these are black and white photos, and they just really give you a sense of what it's like to train with weights.
Yeah. It's kind of, they said he spoke a lot about mind muscle connection. And you kind of like blow it off when you're young, and you really don't think about it all that much. You're just worried about hoisting the weight. But I think it's really true. I think when some people, they decide to exercise, and at any sort of exercise, if the results kind of slow down, then we have to think, we have to be mindful and present in the moment of what we're actually doing. And that's probably, what helps any sort of results, right? Rather than just going through the motions.
Absolutely. I think this level of intensity, people just were not prepared for. Like, I think in the 70s, like what did anyone do? They jogged around the block or something. Maybe if they played some really serious competitive sport like wrestling or something, they could be familiar with this level of intensity, but most people weren't.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah. I mean, the people that were lifting weights in gyms was such a small percentage of the population. This is another photo from Pumping Iron, and you could see the light coming through the front windows. Of course, here the contrast, it just looks like it's like a white wall, but it's actually the foggy morning, and you can see Arnold flexing his legs behind, the reflection in the mirror from the dumbbell rack. Yeah, great stuff. And back then, when Ken Sprague said, he goes, there were barely any more than 10 people in the gym, during that time. I mean, that's why Arnold walked around with bare feet. You know, there was no one's going to drop a weight on anybody. There wasn't a whole lot of people there.
Oh, it's insane. Yeah, they were so casual. They were just wearing just crappy clothes, and the Pacific Ocean was not very far away. And yeah, Arnold's barefoot in the gym.
Yeah.
Behind him is Ken Waller, I think.
Yeah.
Who plays a big role. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, that's Ken to the camera right, and then to the left of him is he was a European bodybuilder. He's mentioned in the book. I think that's Pierre van der Steen.
Belgium.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's right. He's from Belgium. Yes. As Pierre.
Pierre van den something.
Yeah, that was Van den Steen. I mean, yeah, I can't recall right off the top of my head, but ripped to the bone. Muscularity, as they call it, just very, very low body fat level. He was known for.
Yep. Now, for those of you that can't see the photo, Arnold is in the front. This is shot through a mirror. The mirror is behind the dumbbell rack, and the photographer has got the camera pointed at the mirror. So he's looking at Arnold's reflection, and Arnold's pulling up his gym shorts to reveal the development of his upper quads, the striations or the distinguished muscles of the different heads of the quads. And, it's called check posing, which bodybuilders would do, or just inspecting their muscle. And I think to most Americans at that time, for a man to do that, you would be considered just narcissistic. It would be considered just wrong, and kind of, I think at the time people would have said it's kind of gay for you to be looking at your muscles like that. But everything changed, I think, culturally because of this book and subsequent things.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay. Here's a full-blown picture of Arnold straight on. You can see just how massively developed he is. He's in contest shape here. I think this is from the book Pumping Iron. You can correct me if I'm wrong. Maybe the second edition or something, a later edition.
Probably did come from the second edition. I had the obviously the original, and I think that's from a contest in New York. And the only reason which would be pre-75, but or this could be from 1980. No, it's not from 1980. It's from 74. And I think if you could see the gentleman between where Arnold's right arm would be framed left, there's a gentleman sitting there, like a large guy in a blazer with like a judge's badge. I think that's a professional wrestler, Brunar Sammartino. So there's some getting in the weeds trivia.
Mark, you are a pro, because just getting into the weeds here, I was looking at this photo and I was thinking, this is not Sydney. This is not Arnold. And when he came back in 1980, and he wasn't really in peak form. This looks like Arnold in peak form. So I was trying to place it, and it's not the competition that's in the movie Pumping Iron, where he's in South Africa. So I couldn't quite figure out where this was taken.
Yeah, I mean, and I combed through so many photos, and then also just when I was interviewing Charles Gaines at his home in Alabama, and I spent a few days with him, and and it was time to say goodbye, and I brought several of his books for him to sign for me. Being the fanboy, he's written several nonfiction books and a novel, and he said, he goes, "Oh, I'm glad you brought the original." He goes, "I never liked any of the reissues. They changed the cover of the book. They changed some photos within, and I've never even looked at them. I look at the cover and I don't even open the book of the newer reissues." But he said, yeah, they changed quite a few things in the newer ones. I guess kind of update them. But he goes, it just, to me, he goes, I never cared for them much.
I think I have a second edition, so it has some of the 1980 competition in it, for example.
Is that the one with Tom Platz on the cover and not Headquarters.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. It's got Tom Platz in color on the cover.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure it's also a publishing decision. They're like, hey, look, guys, let's put a color photo on it and get someone more contemporary. And we got to move some units. So,
Yep. No, it's understandable. This photo I love, and this is in the book. It caught my eye when I was a kid, and it's never always stayed with me. Three things. One, obviously the Southern California, the palm trees, the camaraderie, the fun, the casual nature of the relationship between Arnold and Franco. Franco's hanging upside down from a bar. They're training outdoors, and then of course there are two beautiful girls there in bikinis who they're hanging out with. So I think one of the best photos, I think, that captures the whole milieu.
oh, absolutely. And just Arnold's condition there, just you look at the size of the trapezius muscles. And I mean, it's just, you know, it, this is I think they took these photos in 72 or 73, which really puts it in perspective that his level of development and Franco's and a few of the other top guys were there at that point in time. And that's at the weight pit in Venice, which was, the original gold was a couple blocks up and about a block or two down. But you could see like the little benches there, which now that place is all, it's all upgraded and it's got like a nice cemented type, almost miniature amphitheater type look to the seating area. And there you see like little wooden Little League benches, which is what it was like for many, many, many years. Yeah, just a foggy morning in Venice.
Incredible. I think you say this several times in the movie that it's a magical little world that's just we're never going to see it again, right? It's just like lightning in a bottle,
Yeah.
and then no more.
Yeah, it was John Balick, who's in the he's a gentleman who competed in the early to mid 60s and then became a photographer and publisher and published. He finally bought a publication called Iron Man and was the owner, publisher, editor for a couple decades of it. And he had come from Chicago and he had said, he goes, that area, Southern California area, Santa Monica, Venice, it was kind of the closest thing they had to Greenwich Village on the West Coast. And I think that's very true, in terms of artists flocking there because the rent was cheap. And just living a life outside of the mainstream American life. Yeah.
Yep. Bunch of strange subcultures rubbing up against each other in Venice at that time, including this one.
Yes.
All right. Now we got a picture of you, the young you.
Yes.
Just for the listeners, we've got Joe Weider talking to a guy called Mike Mentzer, who is kind of a philosopher intellectual of bodybuilding, but also a top competitor. Maybe he had just done a seminar or something. And Marc Martinez, my guest, is looking at the camera right over Mike Mentzer's shoulder. So tell us about this shot.
The funny thing was that morning in the gym, it was depending on my school schedules when I could make it in the gym. And I liked being able to get in the mornings because it was less crowded. And that morning, there was a photographer named Craig Dietz, and he was taking shots of another top competitor, a guy named Danny Padilla, and then Mike Mentzer. And then they were a lot of shots with Joe Weider there. So this was kind of how the myth was perpetrated was you'd see these guys training, obviously, because that was their almost job, so to speak. And then when it came time for magazine photos, Joe would come in and then Joe would pose with the guys like he was there all the time, pointing out how to do this certain type, And so when I meet people from other parts of the country that actually thought Joe was there, and it's like, well, the running joke was guys would make fun of him. I mean, in a good natured way, like, Joe was in here yesterday showing me how to, turn my wrist a bit to make this curl perfect. But it's sold, right? But anyway, this morning was a photo shoot with Danny Padilla and Mike Menzer, and Joe Weider was there. Craig Dietz took the photos, and it was kind of like a relatively normal morning in the gym. It wasn't until I was making this documentary that my friend in New York, he's a lawyer named Scott Murphy, and he's, as a lawyer, he does a lot of tracking, and he goes, I was looking online. He goes, is this you? I'd never seen that photo until he showed it to me a couple of years ago. I had no idea it existed. Um, Again, I don't know if that photo ever appeared in the Weider magazine. I would think that it didn't, because I was, up until probably the early 80s still buying the magazines, and I figured, okay, this thing would have shown up by then, but maybe not. But yeah, so that's one morning in either late 1977 or early 78, and there I am.
Wow. Wow. Now I got to ask this question. So Menser here is so ripped. What was the situation with steroid use there? So one story I hear from the old timers is, oh, we only took a cycle like 8 weeks before a contest, and most of the time we were not on gear. But I wonder about that. Maybe can kind of set the record straight.
They were more moderate back then, but I would say it was, and they made no bones about, there was no secret. And in fact, one of the first days that I was at Gold's, there was a guy who was a training partner of Robby Robinson, and he had just come back from Mexico, because they would drive down to the pharmacies in Tijuana and load up and then drive back, and he was distributing whatever the guys needed. And you have to remember, back then they weren't illegal, so wasn't that big a deal. I've heard anywhere from 12 to 16 weeks was more the truth, and they would go off. I mean, the guys, I haven't followed bodybuilding in so long, but I hear they're on them year round, which is probably why guys are dying in their, even 20s, 20s and 30s. But I think it's a combination of a lot of things. But I would see the guys get larger. I mean, this was, I think Danny and Mike were actually getting ready for a show, which is why they do the photos when they start getting in the top shape.
Makes sense.
Yeah. So they were definitely on. And the prevailing wisdom back then seemed to be anywhere from 12 to 16 weeks that they'd be on. And back then the guys would actually, get bigger and more ripped. They weren't dieting off a lot of fat. They weren't guys that were bulking up and then they would have to lose weight, strip down. It was almost reverse. Yeah, that was a dirty little secret.
I think the guys, when they're off cycle, like I think even in your film, you can see a lot of variation in, for example, how Ken Waller looks at different times. And sometimes you can see he's pretty smooth and, doesn't look nearly as good, especially like when you're wearing clothes. Like if you're that big, you actually could look fat.
Yeah.
I think like even Arnold can look fat
Right.
wearing clothes, even though he looks great without the clothes on. And just seemed like there was for some guys, there was a lot of variation between when they were on and off in terms of how ripped they were, for example.
Oh yeah, without a doubt. And it was, and that was the thing. I think it was, they didn't seem to really care that they didn't look like Superman every day of the year. It was about the actual competition. And it's like, okay, well, this is part of the process. I'll work on my weak points in the off season. I'll eat within reason. I'm not going to eat like a maniac, but I'll eat within reason. And then when it's time to lock down the diet and go on the stuff, then I know that my hard work will show. And that seemed to be, that's a total paradigm shift, I think, in the thinking of guys that feel they have to look that way all the time now, because that goes beyond just the competition. Those are, I think, other motivating factors going on there. But
yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that, Mark, because one of the things that occurred to me, having lived through all this, is that bodybuilding kind of made it okay for men to care a lot about what their physique looked like. Whereas pre-golden era, or even through the golden era, most American men would have just been embarrassed to say something like, oh, I got to build up my biceps or something like this. But this bodybuilding movement, and also like, I don't know if you remember a movie called American Gigolo with
Oh yeah, Richard Gere.
Richard Gere. They show Richard Gere working out with gravity boots and dumbbells and laying out his Armani jacket and ties and shirts and caring a lot about his appearance. And he's a super successful heterosexual gigolo. So at some point it got normalized for men to care about their physique and how they looked. And so now you have guys going to the gym, not thinking like for 1 week of the year, I'm going to look like Adonis, but actually just throughout the course of the year, I want to just look good. And it's somewhat different mindset.
Yeah. Well, yeah, again, I mean, because American Gigolo was what, early 80s. And then you think today, I mean, obviously, like you said, now it's so mainstream and so ingrained in our culture that now there's manscaping products, right? I mean, could you imagine that, like, in 1972 or 1981, a manscaping product? It's now it's normalized, so.
Yeah. I think that's for some of my listeners who are, professors in
Right.
sociology and humanities and social science and stuff. I think one of the most interesting aspects of what we're talking about, you might just say, oh, we're just talking about some weird cult or subculture that existed in the 70s and these guys are freaks. In fact, it kind of took over America. Like your son in high school is probably like lifting weights in part because of pumping iron and all this stuff that happened in the 70s.
Yeah, bodybuilding for, I think, a lot of people, I think it jumped the shark. But I mean, the culture's still there and it's huge and it has its own. It's so huge. It's a huge business. But my son and his buddies, they were doing like CrossFit in high school. And they saw lifting, one, as getting stronger and, obviously helping their self-esteem and feeling confident about themselves. But in terms of like, muscle for muscle's sake, they couldn't understand it.
Yep.
So it's kind of flipped in that way. But then again, there's the hardcore bodybuilding where that's, now the top competitors are weighing 300 pounds, with no body fat on stage, That's
Yeah. I think one of the reasons I like guys of my age kind of prefer golden age bodybuilders is they look a little more normal or aesthetically appealing to me than the current super monstrous guys that are the top bodybuilders.
oh,
I would also even say that like the top CrossFitters, some of those guys are on here, but a lot of the top CrossFitters are not that far off some of the smaller golden age guys in size, wouldn't you say?
oh yeah, definitely. I mean, their physiques are really impressive. I remember, I don't know if he's still competing, but Rich Froning.
Yep.
Yeah, and I'm like, yeah, you know what? I go, there's probably tons and tons of guys that say, hey, I wouldn't mind looking like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, just a fit looking, muscular guy. Um, yeah.
Yeah. Froning would be like on the small side, I think, even for like a professional guy in the 70s, but still it's within the range. He's definitely much bigger than any normal guy you'd see walking around in the 70s.
Right, right.
Let me go to another photo. So here's Mr. Aesthetic. You mentioned his name earlier. His name is Frank Zane. And for the real guys that are sort of mass fanatics who really like big bodybuilders, they think of Frank Zane as kind of frail and skinny. In fact, maybe Froning could be like more muscularly dense than Frank Zane. But here he is in his famous pose. I think this is called the vacuum, where you can just really see just how chiseled he is and just how perfectly proportioned every part of his body is.
Yeah, and Frank was, or is, one of his competitive days. He's a very nice guy. I would see, I saw Frank at World Gym when I switched to World Gym when Ken sold golds, and he was in there most mornings. A very quiet, well-spoken man. He was a school teacher. I know I think he got his master's at Cal State LA and his PhD, um, I think it was out near Palm Springs. I'm trying to think of what state university was out there. Maybe Loma Linda. anyway, he was really, really into the mind muscle connection. But another thing too, though, for people that didn't see Frank Zane in person up close, he was a lot larger than people gave him credit for. Because he was friends with the two guys that were managers at World Gym at the time, a gentleman named Zabo Kazuski and Eddie Giuliani, and they were all buddies. And they would talk, and I'd be there in the morning with one of my training partners, and you would stand next to Frank, and he was about, I think we were about the same height, about 5'10" or so. But for people that said he was small, I think everything was so in proportion that you didn't realize how large he was. I mean, of course, he's stepping on stage against other professional bodybuilders who are outweighing him by 20, 30 pounds. But, if you saw him walking across the street, like most laymen would say, holy cow, who's that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now at 5'10", would he compete under 200?
Yeah, he'd be right at the limit. I think he would always be anywhere from, I think in the early 80s, and I really liked his look when I think he had stopped competing by 83 or 84 maybe. I think 83. But he was probably the high 190s in the early 80s. And I liked that look better than the 70s when he won the Olympias, because I think they said he was at the heaviest about 190. But
Yeah. So it's at 5'10", 190, even though he's like really low percentage body fat. I think like Froning could be more dense, don't you think?
oh yeah, no doubt. Yeah, I'm sure he probably carried more beef, and it's just amazing to think of how the aesthetics changed. So
Yeah. I think nowadays any guy, who could have like the Zane 5'10", 190 proportions would be like, I'll take that in a
yeah,
second. So this is a photo of a French bodybuilder named Serge Nubret, who I always thought in terms of aesthetics, and seems like every single picture I've seen of him, he's just ripped. I think he's just genetically gifted. I always felt he had one of the best physiques out there, and didn't get the credit that he.
I agree. And it shows you just how subjective it all is, because yeah, I mean, uh, for people to look at this photo, it's just mind blowing. It's just
In the 70s to see that, you just wouldn't know what, like you would say like, oh, like those weird little marks that when they draw Captain America or, something, it's like those little things. Now I know what they are. Those are real like
yeah,
features of human.
yeah. It's just amazing. And I agree. I mean, how do you say one guy's better than the other when you're not doing anything objectively to, no one crosses the finish line first, no one jumps higher, no one even lifts more weight. It's just what certain judges decide to see and mark down on a piece of paper. So like
Yep.
figure skating, I guess. But even that, they're doing something. Oh yeah.
So here's a photo of Robby Robinson. This is a very imposing, it's a full page photo in the original, I think the original Pumping Iron book. And he's facing the camera. And again, when I like was flipping through this in the bookstore as a kid, and I saw this, I was just blown away because Robby is just massive in this
Yeah.
picture, but he's sitting down relaxed.
Yeah. Yeah. Just sitting there. And then he obviously had that style of dressing, just so Venice, the beads and the ripped shirt and
Yep. Incredible. Now, did you try to get him for your movie? Because he's in the movie, but he's not, I don't think you interviewed him,
yeah, I
right?
did. There were several guys I tried to get, um, and who knows what goes through their mind. I did have other people speak with them, like Bill Grant or Ken Waller, like, hey, we're participating in this. We think you should. You think you'd have fun. It's kind of an archival piece, but yeah, he didn't. I'm trying Danny Padilla. I wanted to get because he was a big part of the Santa Monica Golds. But yeah, it would have been nice to get him. Would have been great to get Danny because he's got a fantastic sense of humor. Great insights.
When I first saw this photo as a kid, I almost thought they kind of on purpose put there's a white guy in the background working out who, he's not unathletic or unfit, but clearly like is like almost like from a totally different level of development as Robby. And it was almost like a contrast between like this guy sitting in the foreground and this guy working really hard.
Oh, I know. I know that could just be George Butler's eye too, but yeah, the top guys were just from another planet.
Unbelievable. Okay, so here are the three. This is Butler, Gaines, and Arnold, and a pretty small looking Arnold, like way off his seems like way off his contest size.
Yeah. So there's Charles Gaines on the far left, George Butler in the middle, and then Arnold. And I know the story went that, I mean, Pumping Iron the movie wouldn't even have been made because Arnold wanted to just retire, and George Butler, who wanted to make the documentary, said, it's not going to work unless you're in it, and we'll try and get some money to pay you to make it worth your while. And I mean, it was a struggle, but I mean, I think you look at those, one, obviously Arnold being the figure that would be able to attract the attention and had that charisma, and then two guys that, Gaines is a wonderful writer, and George Butler, filmmaker, and they had connections within the New York literary world and the art world to kind of move some mountains to get that done. I just I told Charles, and I said, it took me decades for me to realize that my love affair with bodybuilding probably wasn't so much bodybuilding itself, the world that you wrote about, the pros. And he had said he goes, I kind of had to approach it like a sun also rises type approach. He goes, I had to think of that in my head as like some kind of, I'll use these bodybuilder guys think of them as expatriates separated from America, and take it from that. So those guys,
Yeah, beautifully done. I recommend the writing in the book Pumping Iron, not just the photographs. It's really beautifully written.
Yeah, wonderful.
So Mark, I should have done this earlier, but I want to play now a little trailer for your documentary. Again, apologies to the people who are only getting audio, but at least you can hear what people are saying. I really recommend for this episode you get on YouTube so you can see all these photos and video that we're sharing with you.
There's a feeling back then that I don't know if anybody will ever understand.
It was as close to Greenwich Village on the West Coast that we had.
It was the last stop before jumping in the ocean, is what the reputation was.
California itself was a stunning change for me from any place else.
And it had what you can't buy, which is a gestalt, a feeling about it.
And the will to train there felt totally like you just fell down with a parachute to the perfect place.
Well, what it was like was magic. It was almost better than any reality that I would have imagined.
It was like a series of dominoes falling, and if one of them hadn't, none of this would have happened. I mean, it was just this perfect synchronicity of good luck events.
The world that I lived in for those years was the best world I ever lived in.
I love that quote from Grant.
Oh, yes.
That world was, what did he say? That world was the best, that world that I lived in was the best world, or something like that.
That I ever lived in. Yeah.
Incredible. Yeah. Talk to us a little bit about the struggles that you went through in getting that documentary made. I mean, my understanding is making a documentary film is just always an incredible struggle.
Yeah, it's because it's always about one, even being able to pitch it, and this is really 100% homemade. I mean, there was the only pitch that I ever really made was to a gentleman that I found out about through the TV station I was working at the time. He was on a public access show on a Sunday, and he was a local businessman who also ran a cancer foundation, but he did life coaching. And his office was in the same city as a TV station that I worked at, which was in Oakland, California. So I contacted him via email, and then also left a message and didn't hear back for about at least a month or so. And he had called me back, and we set up a meeting, and he talked for like more than an hour, and it really wasn't even about the documentary. I truthfully, even though I'd been kicking around a documentary, the idea for this really didn't come out until this gentleman's name is Mike Murphy. He and I had probably had a couple conversations, and then he says, what do you really want to do? I know you have your job, but what do you really want to do? And this came out. So, he said, well, I'll see what I could do. So he actually gave me the initial seed money, which gave me the opportunity to actually fly out Bill Grant from New York, and Ken Waller, who was in Alabama at the time, and you're still there. Ken Sprague, who's living in Georgia with his wife, Rudy Hermosillo, who was in Florida, and then bring Dave Dupre, rent a studio. And those were the initial 5 interviews. So, and it's always been a struggle because, you have to track down when you're going in the past, especially in a niche thing like bodybuilding, where there's not a whole lot of stock footage. It's not like, culling through NFL or Major League Baseball highlights, right? It's like not much exists. So and then actually convincing guys to get involved. It took, once you got a few guys and then they would contact other guys, then it kind of made it easier. And I knew the people that I wanted to get from the time frame. Didn't get all of them, but I thought I need to get enough to where I can give a nice, range of views or opinions, to kind of like give it gravity, instead of just talking to one person and then saying, well, it was so-and-so. You need to get different opinions. So anyway, struggle all the way, even down to fair use, getting a lawyer to, because there's certain clips that I'm using that the lawyer had to make sure were cleared fair use, right? Is it transformative? Am I not just ripping it off, so to speak? So, still rolling the boulder up the hill.
It definitely comes off. It's apparent, I think, to anybody who watches that it was a labor of love. So
thank you.
Congratulations.
Thanks.
So here's the cover of the book. I think maybe not the one that I have. Is this the original cover?
This is the original, and that's Ed Corney.
Yep.
Who is described in the book. I believe that's when he won the Mr. Universe contest in Baghdad, Iraq that year that they covered. And that's the one thing about Charles Gaines. It's, because he didn't write this book for bodybuilding fans. He wrote it just to show what top level bodybuilders, their lives were like. And he said, that they were there the night that he won the top amateur prize in Baghdad, Iraq. And he goes, and then a few months later, we're visiting him as he's working as the door bouncer of a nightclub in San Jose, California, which at that point in time shows you that these guys do it out of love. They obviously don't do it for money. They all had day jobs. They all had other things. So,
this was recapitulated a little bit in the early to mid 90s when MMA, like Ultimate Fighting, got started. And when it started, it was so small that, the guy who was a world champion middleweight might be working as a bouncer outside a bar. Same thing. So for me, that was actually what kind of like got me. I sort of transitioned from being interested in lifting weights and stuff like that into like doing mixed martial arts and stuff like that. But in both cases, like little tiny subcultures that blew up into big sports.
Yeah. And then MMA, it got, was that Serge Nubret?
Yeah, this is a picture of Serge, which I found, which just shows how, because he's so
Yeah.
aesthetic, but in this picture, you can just see how thick the guy is. Just unbelievable. Like when I saw stuff like this, and also of like Sergio Oliva when I was a kid, it just blew me away. Like I couldn't believe people were that developed.
Oh, I know. Yeah, look, yeah, wow. Yeah, that's so yeah, he looks so powerful there. I know that the first photos I saw of Sergio Oliva were taken by Wayne Gallish, the Australian um, photographer and filmmaker
Really?
who covers bodybuilding, and they were in a muscle builder in the late 70s, and it was almost cartoonish. I could not. I was looking at, like you had mentioned. You couldn't believe someone was that massively developed, and I was looking at the Sergio photos as well as I'm looking at this Serge Nubret photo here. But I was like, something wasn't registering with my eye, and I'm like, what is it? What is it? What is it? And I'm like, oh my god, his arm, his upper arm is the size of his head. Like,
Yes, exactly.
is that even possible?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. This, the pose that only Sergio does where he just puts his arms straight up vertically.
yeah,
But you can see like his bicep tricep combo is like bigger than his head. It's insane. I don't think I have that in here. Otherwise I'd show it to you. Um, this is Arnold and Franco Colombo check
yeah,
posing. Arnold's doing, what is that? Side chest pose.
yeah. The
And,
original Golds. Yeah, it's from Pumping Iron, I believe, from the book. Yeah,
and I like, it reveals just kind of how serious and analytical these guys are, right? Like if you look at the
yeah,
expression on their faces, just like professionals, like sculptors.
yeah. Absolutely.
Okay,
There's
This is the only Sergio Oliva picture I have, but it gives you a sense of how freakishly developed the guy was.
Yeah, and that's from one of the from that photo shoot from Wayne Galash. That's He took that photo. Yeah, it's just amazing. The size of
Incredible.
the forearm and the bicep, and
Yeah, peak of bicep to bottom of tricep. Sometimes it looks like that distance is as big as his head. Sometimes
yeah,
this one I like. So Ken Waller, who you interviewed at length, this is Ken standing with Arnold, and they're also both kind of inspecting themselves in the mirror here. Ed Corney's on the side.
yeah, yeah. This was I think that's I got that from it's a Jean Mosé photo. John Balick um was able to come through with a lot of photos from the original Gold's Gym, and Jean Mosé, who had passed, had given all of his slides to John. And this is from that series, and this is in 75. As you can see, this is probably during the filming of Pumping Iron, where they were both getting ready, one for the amateur contest and then Arnold for the pro. You can see Robby in there as well. Yeah. Wow.
One of the things that really hit me, obviously Arnold was kind of the star of Pumping Iron and did a lot to popularize the sport. And one of the things that for me was that the word charisma wasn't really that widely used when I was a kid. And I kind of learned the meaning of the word charisma in like the example of Arnold Schwarzenegger, because he was such a larger than life personality. That picture you sent me of him wearing the hat on the beach, the
Yeah.
kind of like fedora, but he's like, flexing his huge muscles and wearing this fedora. It's like, he's just a character and he just has a certain appeal. People can't resist being charmed by the guy. And it's like the first real example of charisma that I had seen.
Yeah. I mean, I guess, yeah, confidence, there's confidence, and it's kind of like a Venn diagram. There's within charisma, there's confidence, but there's also other things that go into charisma. It takes more than just confidence, and he definitely had it. I know, in speaking with Charles Gaines, he had mentioned the time that they were writing I think it was an article. He said that they were writing for We magazine. He was writing for We, and it was leading up to writing Pumping Iron. And he said, we took Arnold and several of the other bodybuilders, because they were all in New York for the Mr. Olympia and then whatever the concurrent amateur contests were being held the same night. And he said, and we took them all to the Algonquin Hotel.
Right.
He said, because I wanted to take, these, freakishly large muscular guys who probably never heard of the Algonquin Hotel. He goes, I knew right then, he goes, I saw how Arnold immediately sized up the room and knew what he didn't know exactly what it was, but what it meant. And he goes, he was always a quick study. Most of the other guys didn't get it, but he did. Like, okay, well, these guys, the people that come to the Algonquin, they're movers and shakers in another field. And it's important that I charm them and get to know them and impress them.
You mentioned Arnold at the Algonquin, and this is it Gaines's writing?
Yeah, Charles Gaines.
Yeah. I mean, as you know, as we were saying earlier, he has real literary sensibilities. And for someone now reading that again in the book from the 70s, they might even be getting an insight into what the literary world of New York looked like in the 70s, because I think people today don't necessarily know what the Algonquin Hotel is.
Right. Exactly. And again, too, who even reads anymore? I mean, we know. I think less of the culture read, but you're right. Is the Algonquin and the Round Table? It's gone. Obviously, those figures are gone. The Kurt Vonnegut's and the Thomas Wolfe's and all those people. And then, of course, the previous generations of the Algonquin. And I think that's the lasting, enduring success of that book, Pumping Iron, is it wasn't written for just the muscle head. It was kind of an introduction to the rest of the culture for that. It just drew from a wider swath of our culture, I think. Anyway, Charles's experiences.
Yeah, I recommend it. I'm probably repeating myself too many times, but I recommend it to everyone to have a look at it. I'm gonna just play a couple minutes here of video from the movie Pumping Iron. It's Arnold working out at Gold's, and then talking about how the pump feels when the blood rushes into your muscles. And this is a very famous kind of discussion by Arnold, which was actually somewhat controversial for a little while, but you'll see why.
Good bodybuilders have the same mind when it comes to sculpting than the sculptor has. You have to analyze it. You look in the mirror and just say, okay, I need a little bit more deltoid, a little bit more shoulders so to get the proportions right. So what you do is you exercise and put those deltoids on. Whereas an artist would just slap on some crayon on each side, and this is the easier way. We go through a harder way to do it on a human body, I mean, obviously a lot of children look at you and they think it's kind of strange what you're doing, But this is the people who don't know much about it. As soon as you find out about what the whole thing is about, they tell you it's just like another thing. I mean, it's not any stranger as going into a car and trying to go in a quarter mile, 5 seconds. I mean, that's for me strange.
Now, for people who can't see, this is Arnold doing concentration curls, pumping up his bicep, and now he's going to talk about what the pump feels like.
The greatest feeling you can get in the gym, or the most satisfying feeling you can get in the gym, is the pump. Let's say you train your biceps. Blood is rushing into your muscles, and that's what we call the pump. Muscles get a really tight feeling, like your skin is going to explode any minute. It's really tight. It's like somebody blowing air into your muscle. It just blows up, and it feels different. It feels fantastic. And it's as satisfying to me as coming is, as having sex with a woman and coming. And so can you believe how much I'm in heaven? I'm like getting the feeling of coming in the gym. I'm getting the feeling of coming at home. I'm getting the feeling of coming backstage when I pump up, when I pose out in front of 5,000 viewers. I get the same feeling.
So, Marc, probably you're familiar with that clip. Now, do you feel like in that era, guys were self-conscious about the homosexual, charges of homosexuality and bodybuilding. They wanted to like kind of make themselves seem like hyper heterosexual.
Oh, you know, I can only speak for myself. In speaking with other guys, in hindsight, we laugh like we were so clueless as to think that how so many gay guys were around in that culture, which makes perfect sense because it's a lot of well-built, guys. But we never thought of it. I mean, I'll tell you when it dawned on me. I was in a bookstore and I was getting a magazine, and it was one that John Defendis was on the cover, right? And it had him in a vacuum pose, and it said, John Defendis, is he the next Frank Zane? And they showed like a side by side. So I'm picking up the magazine, and to the left of me is one of my professors, and he's got like another muscle magazine, and I'm like, oh, okay. And it never, it never dawned on me. And then,
And I'm guessing this professor doesn't train.
no, exactly. Just a big bear of a guy, not, nice trimmed beard, nice clothes and everything. And then I'm like, oh, and then, but it never did. I mean, I don't, in my experience, no. I don't know if maybe when guys spoke to other guys, but I think we were all just so clueless as to think that, oh yeah, well, it would make perfect sense, right? And I think outside of one incident, I don't think I was ever, even approached or made aware of it. I think Arnold rolling the cameras, that was just a stroke of genius by him.
Yeah. I was totally unaware of this idea that, gay men were attracted to like bodybuilders until I saw, I think maybe around the same time, I saw the Rocky Horror Picture Show. And there was that character, I forgot the name, Rocky. Maybe it's Rocky.
Right. The blonde guy, and he's ripped. Yeah.
Yeah. And he's obviously kind of like a bodybuilder. And then I kind of realized, and then there's even a line that the main character, whoever the main character of Rocky Horror Picture Show is, he sings a song, and in his song, he mentions a Steve Reeves movie as that was, I guess, very stimulating for him. And then I kind of put two and two together. And until that point, it had just not occurred to me that any of this was of any interest to gay men. So I guess it was the same for you.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Our concern was getting stronger and getting muscle, and then not realizing the ancillary culture going on around us. That's funny. That's true. Yeah, it was Tim Curry, I believe, right? That was kind
Tim
of like,
Curry.
Yeah.
Dr. Frankfurter, maybe? I forgot his name.
Yes.
Yeah. So that was the first time I made the connection. Until then, I was just like, to me, it was more an extension. I had been, I was a swimmer and a football player, and I thought they actually got us into lifting weights. That's an interesting angle, actually, that in parallel to bodybuilding, for some of the international sports, like swimming was always a very international sport. Some of the Russian training methods, East German and Russian training methods, leaked into the American sphere very early on. So swimmers were lifting weights before football players, actually. And so when I was doing age group swimming, even in the middle of Iowa, they had us lifting weights. And so I was already into weightlifting culture before, like, I even knew there was a thing called bodybuilding, because it came through competitive swimming.
Yeah. Wow. So, and that was late 70s or early 80s?
Yeah, this was in the 70s. Actually, I probably first touched a weight in mid to late 70s, something like that, when I was in age group swimming. So, yeah.
Yeah. I knew at my school, at my high school, there was, obviously a lot of lifting. But again, until I saw the book Pumping Iron, I didn't make the connection between bodybuilding and weights any more than, it was more for sports like you. So
a little advanced, I think, at least relative to Iowa. Did your high school have a good weight room already in the 70s?
It was pretty utilitarian, but it was known as a Southern California high school football power. But I was surprised that the the facilities were so meager, but you know, the booster club would always try and get more Olympic sets in there and whatnot. But I'm sure right now they probably have a, you know, a training center that looks, you know.
When I went to my high school for one of my reunions not that long ago, maybe 10 years ago, they had just unbelievable facilities like these, you know, the big power cubes where you can squat and do Olympic lifts and stuff. And they just had this huge cavernous room with row after row of these power cubes. Just unbelievable.
Wow.
Yep.
Yeah.
We've come a long way, man.
Yeah, sure have. I was talking to one of my buddies and I said, yeah, I'm going to be speaking with a guy who's a physicist, who's a Caltech and Cal grad, and you know, did some time at Harvard and the Super Collider. And I said, and yet he has a little bit of interest in golden age bodybuilding. I said, so that I go, that combo alone fascinates me.
I love it. I mean, it was a big part of my adolescence and growing up, and same for you. And I'll tell you my one, like, I didn't know any of these famous guys that we were talking about. I just knew them through the magazines and seeing them, you know, reading about them. The one guy that I met, I guess I briefly met Bertil Fox. I think I told you about that. But I met Arnold because when we were training at the Caltech weight room, one of the local LA guys who worked out there told us that, oh, he works out, I think at World Gym, which was then owned by Joe Gold, but it was World Gym down in Santa Monica around this time. So we just decided we'd go there and see if we could just meet him. Met Joe Gold, got a t-shirt and said hello to Arnold and this other German guy, Joseph Wilcox, who was a Mr. Universe.
Right.
They were doing inclines when we came in, and Arnold was in very good shape. I think he was probably getting ready for a roll or something because he looked cut out of glass actually when we saw him. So that's my closest brush to all these guys that you trained with for years.
Yeah, well, I saw Arnold the first time, I think it was in 77, and he'd already retired. So he was running and really, really lanky and lean and running. And then by 1980, when he started getting ready for the Olympia, you could start to see some of the transformation. You know, it was getting a bit larger, but it's to think of that. I mean, World Gym, I really enjoyed World Gym. I was a member there from like 79 to 85, nice and quiet, nice and clean, just a different environment. I haven't been into a gym in a while. I usually just train at home, but there's so many more people in the gyms now. You know, I don't know if I'd like to stand around waiting for equipment all day.
Yeah, me too. I mostly work out at home too now. I guess we're old guys, but you know, you and I have lived through this whole transformation of American culture. And I just want to say to the academics who are listening to this, you know, things change. It's hard to have a feel for it unless you lived, I basically would say unless you lived through it, right? Otherwise, like you can't really fully understand how the world looked in 1970 versus today.
Right. I know. I fear, hopefully not. Hopefully we didn't lose your academics within the first 2 minutes.
No.
But I was trying to explain to someone, and it was a story about the Gold's Gym T-shirt of how Rick Drayson had made the design and didn't get any money for it. But at the time, they said, well, you know, Gold's Gym had less than 100 paying members at that point. Ken Sprague says, I think I gave him like, you know, $50 off the gym membership, and he gladly took it. You know, I go, it's hard to believe that you didn't see those T-shirts too much. You know, it wasn't a big deal. People are looking at it in hindsight, where they're looking at a world where Gold's Gym has 600 locations around the world and everyone has those T-shirts, and they can't imagine a time where, this gym was like a couple weeks from closing down and being turned into an antique shop. You know, it's kind of hard to, it's kind of hard to go back in time. Like you said, if you haven't lived it or been through it and seen the transformation, you wouldn't believe it. So
my other story that I enjoy telling people, which people can't believe now, but I was in the trainer's room, physical trainer's room at the Caltech athletic complex when I was a college student. This would have been like 85 or something.
Uh-huh.
And I had a pulled muscle in my leg, and I was sitting on the training table. So I was elevated a little bit, and this woman who was the physical trainer was like looking at me from the front. And so she's looking at my knee from the front.
Yeah.
And, if you have well-developed quadriceps, there's like a bulge where the two heads insert above your knee. And she looks at me and she says, yeah, this is really swollen. And I was like, no, that's not the injury. Those are my quadriceps. And this is a physical trainer. Her job is to like mostly treat football players.
Yeah.
And she didn't know the anatomy. She didn't realize that was like the normal development of a strong quadricep. I was just shocked. And then years later, people started using the slang word swole.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, so funny. So it's just crazy.
No.
I had to explain to her like what the quadricep was basically.
Oh my God. That's funny.
Unbelievable. So Marc, I've kept you a long time. You want to tell us, do you have any new projects ongoing? Anything you want to say about the documentary?
Well, yeah, right now the documentary, it's on Amazon Prime, it's on Tubi, it's on another streaming system called Popsy on Plex, also Thrills TV, and then it's going to be on Thrills starting in March, and then it's also on Nuclear TV. These are all streaming systems. I am kind of in a standby pattern on my next project. I really wanted to do something on the music culture of Southern California during about the same time frame, and the rise of K-rock and how it affected music playlists. But it's really hard getting guys to want to speak to you, especially if there's no financial backing or any sort of compensation involved. And beyond that, I'm working on probably some bonus material for a DVD for Dream Big, if we do a DVD. And there's been some interest in it, I think, from an older audience, which this would apply to. And so I'm putting together some stuff that did make a lot of stuff that didn't make film, because I interviewed guys for more than an hour and used basically 2 to 3 minutes of their interview. So there's a lot there. So that's pretty much where that is right now. So, look for Dream Big on those streaming systems, and I'll update on my website to dreambigdoc.com.
Great. I wish you luck with that. And I do want to say this 70s music in Southern California project also is super interesting. And I remember K-rock having a big influence, at least on the Caltech campus. A lot of people listen to K-rock. And it was very unique. Nothing like that exists on radio or anything like it anymore. So definitely do that one if you can get it going.
Yeah, I would love to. That's right. Since with Caltech being in Pasadena and K-rock being located in Pasadena, they were here's another thing where it would be so hard for people to realize what it was like. I remember the early stages of K-rock. They had no commercials. They would just collect money, go on the air, transmit. And then I'd ask my older brother, like, hey, where'd they go? It's like, it disappeared. There's static here. And he goes, they'll be back in a few days. So I remember the first commercial I heard on K-rock, and even at that early age, and this had to be like mid 70s or so. And some part of my brain understood that, okay, good, they're here to stay, but something's going to change. Because now you're beholden to a commercial interest, but that's what makes the world go round. But I know. I really, I've got to make another push into that and recontact guys, because K-rock was so far ahead of the rest of the country that I think once they reached a level to where I think they were bought by Westwood One, which was, I don't even know if Westwood One is around anymore.
Yeah.
But they were obviously like a holding company or a network, that music that was being played in Southern California was now going to be part of a programming list for the rest of the country and then the rest of the world. And that was kind of like a changer. So again, another seminal moment that, takes place and changes culture forever. So yeah, thanks.
Great. Hey, I'll just end with one thing. My wife is a professor of literature and film, and one of the areas she researches is documentary film, mostly about Asian documentary film, not what you do, but through the course of her work, I've met a fair number of people who work in documentary film, and it's a struggle, but it's an art form, and you're producing stuff of lasting value. So I just want to encourage you to keep going, and great accomplishment. Really enjoyed Dream Big, and I'm sure you can do it again.
Well, thank you, Stephen, and yeah, I was listening to a podcast with Ken Burns, and someone had told him, they go, "Do you know what you do?" And he tells them, "Well, I do documentary films." The guy says, "No, you bring back the dead." And of course with his, because he deals with historical figures, but it's yeah, someday we're all going to be gone, so it's going to live on in some way, shape, or form. So
yeah.
Yeah.
How else can people who are 20 years old now have any understanding of what the 70s were like in Southern California, right? Otherwise it's gone forever.
Yeah, exactly. I know, it's now like when we were in grade school and like they're talking about World War II or something, we're just like, yeah.
Right. Great. Well, thanks a lot, Marc.
Well, thank you, Stephen. And I hope we didn't bore too many of your listeners there that are.
Oh, I'm sure they loved it.